Hi, this is Andrea with Northern Whimsy Art Studio. This is the video 2 for the dragonfly kit, the grouting portion. So with your kit comes some black grout in a cup, a sponge, your dragonfly, of course, and a popsicle stick. So you're gonna have to provide a little tub of water that you can use and make this something disposable so that you can throw it away when you're done. You don't want to pour grout water down your sink. Pour it outside and throw the container away. So I just use a sour cream container here. Having a rag of some kind, you can use paper towel, but it will often tear and you'll have little pieces of paper towel. So it's better to use, this is just an old t-shirt rag that I can throw away when I'm done with this. So to get started, I'm going to mix directly in this cup for my grout. You don't want to put very much water at all. So actually I'm going to use my sponge and just squeeze some water in here. So I'm going to go about 2 tablespoons of water to get started here. This guy over. And I'm going to mix my grout in my cup. So that's definitely not enough water, so I'm going to just add a little bit more. We're going for the consistency of thick peanut butter when we're mixing our grout. And careful not to add too much water. Go really slow when you're adding your water, because you can always add more. Taking away is harder, obviously. So I have it mixed well. I got all the dry chunks. I've gone all the way to the bottom of that container. I'm just getting it mixed really good. You can let this sit for a minute and it'll help if you have any chunks in there for it to absorb moisture. For this video, I'm going to keep going. So I'm going to take this grout and I'm just going to lay it on my pieces, or on the piece here. And you can start anywhere. It doesn't really matter where you start. Just getting it covered. So this portion, you lose what all is on here. You can't see it anymore. You cover it all up, and then we'll uncover it here as we work. So I'm squeezing my sponge out to make sure there's no water in it at this point. We want it as dry as possible. And then I'm just using my sponge to smear all over the top. And then we're gonna go around the edges too. So you're gonna fill in those edges. Around the eyes. And this is definitely the messiest portion of this. So you want to have a piece of paper underneath you when you're working. Something to keep your surface protected. So just working around, filling in those edges, covering it all up. Smearing down to fill in those cracks around the edge. Okay. Once I have it all filled in with the sponge, I'm going to come back in and start wiping away a little bit. But I want to give it just a minute or two to dry. It'll help once you get it all smeared on. Just give it a minute and it'll help to keep from pulling too much out. I'm going to rinse my sponge in this bucket here. And then squeeze it out as good as you can. You want to keep your sponge as dry as possible. Okay, so right now, if I were working on my own on this, I'm going to stop and I'm going to give it just a minute to dry. And that'll help to keep from pulling too much out. But for the video, I'm going to go ahead and keep moving. So I'm just going to take my sponge over top after letting it sit for a minute. I'm going to take my sponge over top and I'm just going to pull that grout away. I'm leaving it purposefully in these cracks. I don't want to take too much out. So I'm leaving it in the cracks and just going over the surface and taking it just off the surface. Oops, making a mess here. Okay. I'm filling in little areas that I missed as I go. Pulling away from the edges, cleaning up my edges. Without taking too much out of your, out of the top there. You'll see on your sides, you want to leave as much in those as you can, but make it nice and smooth. And cleaning up all the way around. So these parts where your eyes are and things like that, I'm going to take my popsicle stick and smear a little bit in there and then clean it up with my popsicle stick. Remember, you do not want to dump your grout water down the sink. It will clog your drains. Using my popsicle stick to clean up around those eyes. The mirror on these wings is really fun. It'll take a little bit to get the mirror cleaned up and shiny. So what you're gonna do is once you have this filled in like this, let it sit again for a little while. And then you'll come back in with your dry rag. Use your popsicle stick in between those wings to get it cleaned up. Okay, so at this point, he's pretty well cleaned up. So what I'm gonna do, once my edges are smooth and nice and there's no big chunks, I'm gonna let him sit for about 15 minutes. And then after that, I'm gonna come back in, make sure my sponge is wrung out really good. And then I will wipe it down one more time. And then after, I'll give it another few minutes to dry. And then I'll use my t-shirt and I'll come back in and just polish up that glass and clean it up with a t-shirt. And you'll let it dry again and then polish it again. You're gonna see how it gets hazy. And if you let it get hazy and then wipe it, it'll eventually just shine really nicely. So I have too much moisture right now, so I'm gonna let it dry, but you can see how it's starting to get nice and shiny. You can also use a little bit of white vinegar, but do that after it's totally dry. So give it a couple hours to dry before you do any vinegar, but and don't get it wet. Just put a little bit on your rag and then do it from there. Just a little bit to make it damp. And that'll help to shine it up a little bit also. But you'll wait and let it get dry and hazy. So give it about 20 minutes before you start wiping it with the t-shirt. But that's all there is to grouting. You'll clean it up. You can hang it, put a hanger on the back, or glue it onto a piece of wood, or anything you want like that as far as hanging them. Thanks so much for supporting local business, and I appreciate it. Have a great day. Thanks.